Well, hey everybody, welcome to Always Good News. My name is Mark Miller, and hey, welcome to our very first episode for 2021. This is going to be a great night tonight, and I'm so glad that you're jumping on to join us. And this is a conversation that I know is going to inspire you and encourage you and challenge you. It's going to be awesome. So welcome everybody. Good to see Nathan joining and Kelly. And all of you from all over the world, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Listen, last year when the pandemic hit, and lockdowns began, and it seemed as though headlines were dominated by bad news. After more bad news, after more bad news, we began having these live conversations really for a couple of reasons. First, to help share with you stories of God at work. And, sometimes we don't hear about all the good things that are happening. And so just in a small way, we wanted to make sure the incredible stories of God at work were being heard. And by hearing these stories, our hope is that you'd be encouraged. And so that's why we've been doing this. And then secondly, we want to keep the focus on Jesus in spite of everything that's going on around us. It's so easy to be distracted, isn't it? And we want to hear these stories of God at work and reminded of God's faithfulness and God's goodness. And that would help us refocus on Jesus again. Hebrews 12:2 says, let's fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. And so this year I'm excited to keep having these conversations and keep pointing people to Jesus. I hope it encourages you. I hope it inspires you and challenges you. So thanks for tuning in. And hey, why don't you let some people know that we're live and this is a conversation they're not going to want to miss. Also, if you're watching tonight, let me know where you're watching from in the comment box below. Let us know what city, maybe what country you're watching from. We always love to hear that. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. Good to see everybody jumping on. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to go ahead and add our guest tonight. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to our guest tonight, Pastor Matthew Barnett from Los Angeles, California.
Hello,
Hey,
how are you?
Man, it's so good to have you. I can't tell you what an honor it is to have you tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry I'm in an unusual place. My son is at his baseball meeting down below at his school, so I just went up the mountain and tried to find any place that's slightly shaded. So it's good to be with you.
Hey, that works. We're just glad that you had some time, and we won't tell your son you're missing any of his baseball there. But
Well, there's no sports. We're only meeting about sports right now in California. So.
Oh. Well, for those of you that are watching that do not know Pastor Matthew Barnett, let me introduce him to you, and then Pastor Matthew will jump right in. Pastor Matthew is a New York Times best-selling author, moved to Los Angeles in the September of 1994 and co-founded the Dream Center, which we're going to hear all about. The Dream Center it's right in the heart of LA. Houses over 700 people every day in various programs to overcome addiction and homelessness and lots of other life-challenging problems. He's also the senior pastor of Angelus Temple Foursquare Church that was founded in 1924 by Sister Aimee Simple McPherson, over 7,000 worshipers. And you guys really have built an army with that attitude that we get to serve, that spirit. And man, it is an honor to have you. But before we jump in, Pastor Matthew, we have a tradition here called This or That.
Okay, here we go.
And so this is going to be fun because people might not know this side of Pastor Matthew Barnett. I'll throw two things. You got to pick one. All right, you ready for this?
Gotcha.
All right, hamburger, taco.
Taco.
Passenger or driver?
Passenger.
Okay, here comes a curveball. Ready? Dodgers or Lakers?
Dodgers. 100%.
I couldn't believe that you actually chose. I thought you might say both. Preaching or teaching?
Preaching.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird, actually, surprisingly.
Awesome. Last one. You're doing great. King David or Apostle Paul?
King David.
Okay. Awesome. Pastor Matthew, so good to have you. And I just want to say first from the jump here, what an inspiration you are to me. I've been following your ministry and you for quite a while. And actually, I saw you preach a number of years ago on the east coast of Canada. And I'll tell you what stood out to me. And this may be encouraging or discouraging, depends on which way you take it, but it wasn't even the message that you preached. But when you finished, it was at a large youth conference. When you finished preaching, you jumped down off the stage, pushed past the barricade that was there, and you ministered personally to each student that had come forward that night. And I'll never forget what that meant to me as a leader, in terms of, it wasn't about the spotlight on the stage, but it was about the people that were there responding. And I just want to say thank you for that, and what an encouragement you've been for so many of us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's nothing like just, being amongst, people and being in the mix. And that's kind of what we're doing right now, is we're in it every day, and taking us all the way back to the beginning of the mission field, it feels like, a little bit. So it's interesting to kind of be at this stage of ministry, and when that's how I started 26 years ago.
Yeah, tell me about that. I always love to hear from our guests, kind of their story and their testimony. I know your father is a well-respected man of God, a pastor, but tell us your testimony, how you came to know Christ, and tell us about that.
Yeah, obviously I was raised in a very big mega church. Actually, well, in Iowa, I was born, and then my dad went to Phoenix, Arizona. So I remember just like sleeping amongst the choir robes in order to get warm while he's having a meeting with somebody in the next room. And I just raised in the church my entire life. And I thought that my legacy would really would be to follow my father, take over his church one day, and go forward with that. But when I was 20 years of age, I came to LA, and I was just trying to help my dad find a pastor. We couldn't find one. He got a building in downtown in the inner city that they wanted him to take over and pastor. And nobody wanted the job when they saw the neighborhood, because there was gang warfare in the community and everything. And so he said, son, will you just come and help me for 3 months? And so I find a real pastor. And I've been there now for 26 years. And the road is interesting, because I just thought, because I was Pastor Tommy Barnett's son, I would show up to LA and then everyone would just come to hear me preach. But then I realized really, really quickly that God didn't call me to LA to be a great pastor. He called me to be a city janitor, literally to walk through the streets of LA, pick up broken pieces and tell people they can dream again. And that's what happened. We had a little house and started taking a couple of people who had drug problems, and the ministry began to unfold really amongst failure and disappointment and all the things I did wrong. And I began to realize that you can dream from the place of rock bottom. And so when we had nothing, I took a prayer walk around the city of LA, and I saw so much need. And God spoke to me, and he said, whatever I put in your hand, use it to help people. Started with a couple houses and a few food bags. And now we're at the Queen of Angels Hospital in LA. It's kind of an iconic building on the freeway, 400,000 square feet, 700 residents, and helping people every single day. So the ministry was really kind of founded along the lines of being a 20-year-old kid, not supposed to be there for longer than 3 months, but realizing really, really quickly that there was so much need in the community. And so I just started to use whatever's in my hand and just started helping people. And I found value and joy in that. And so, and now today what's happening, it's beyond my comprehension to see what God is doing on a day-to-day basis. Is truly remarkable.
Wow, Pastor Matthew, just right there, so much rich stuff. Here at Billy Graham Canada, one of our leaders has encouraged us out of Philippians 2:4 that says, not looking to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And I really see you living that out. And I want you to share in a few minutes some of the examples of seeing God at work and the things that are happening. But I need to ask you this: how are you staying encouraged to keep serving day after day, and from 3 months to now 20 plus years in ministry? How do you do it?
Yeah, when the pandemic broke out in Los Angeles, I mean, we have been about 10 months every day pretty much feeding people. The food line has been going on. It started with having enough supply for one day of food. And now it's turned into the most unbelievable thing I've ever experienced in my life. And, when the pandemic broke, what happened was I knew we'd be in lockdown for a long time. And, businesses are shutting down in LA that are way more successful than we are. Like we should be on paper the first ones to go when it comes to surviving during this time. But I told our people, I said, look, what do we have left? They said, we have enough food to feed people for one day. I said, well, let's just give one day, see what happens. Let's just see what God might do. And we just used the reserve for one day. And now we're about 300 days in on a streak that's just been unbelievable of serving and helping people. And It's been extraordinary. You drive down the streets now and homeless encampments are doubled everywhere. There's families that are showing up to our outdoor school that we provided for the kids in the neighborhood. They don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have any of the resources that are
Yeah.
demanded of them to go to school. So we provide all the learning tablets for the kids, and the parents are begging us if they can just sleep in our garden at the church. We've been taking families in who've been living in their cars and going to our outdoor school just because we have the tablets to provide them and the place and the infrastructure there. And it just breaks my heart, because I just see what's going on a day-to-day basis. And I think what keeps me going is seeing God do 24-hour miracles. I never try to think about what's going to happen a year down the road, 5 years down the road. Every day we just say, God, what are you going to do for 24 hours? That's what's kept me going. Because sometimes, you can take a vision personal. Things don't go well or go according to a timetable. We get so addicted to 5-year plans, 10-year plans. And if it doesn't work, we get really discouraged along the way. But I realize that you can't really get discouraged if you just get up every day and say, morning by morning, God, you give us new mercy. And what are you going to do today? And now we're 1.5 million meals into the entire pandemic. And that's drive-through. That's not even including all the other stuff that's going on. But
Wow.
a lot of miracles could happen one day upon one day. And then you finally wake up one day and you realize that you're one of the largest food banks in Los Angeles. You're serving people on a relentless pace that's been unbelievable. That's been nonstop. But you never really see that. You can't plan for that. You just make yourself available and do whatever you can. And you love what you have. You value what you have. You never despise the little that you have to start with. And you just give it your best. And then you watch what God does. And that's kind of been the thing. We've celebrated every little thing that God's given us. People drive through that parking lot. One guy came by and he said, Pastor, I only come by now. I come by twice a day, one to get the food and one to see somebody happy and somebody joyful and people jumping up and down when I come through the food line.
Yeah.
The spirit by which you give away something is just as important as what you give away. And, the campus and the hundreds of residents and the guys in the recovery program, man, they're in the kitchen making meals. Guys that were in prison are now feeding a city. It's just
Wow.
amazing to see what the multiplication of compassion that's going on.
Man, I love it. And that's really, Pastor Matthew, why we started these Instagram conversations back, like you said, 10 months ago during lockdown, is because all the news we were getting was negative, down and out, things
Yep.
closing, the world is ending. But that's not the true story. The true story is I will build my church.
Yep.
And light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot extinguish it. And that's what we're seeing. And I love your Instagram post because the joy in those drive lineups is contagious. And like you said, it's as valuable as the very thing you're handing out. You told me about miracles. I remember watching a video from you, the saddest video you ever had to post. From
I
your
know where you're
kitchen.
going.
Yeah, from your Dream Center kitchen. And it looked like Christmas had been canceled in terms of what you had planned to do to be a blessing. But there was a miracle coming. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, the community has just been looking for a flashpoint, something that's hopeful. And we had this Christmas event that was coming up that was going to be the greatest drive-through lights, and kids can see this beautiful drive-through of lights and presents and bikes and toys. And we had 19,000 presents all prepared and hundreds of bicycles and everything. And then the last minute, with what was going on, the city was really trying to discourage us from having the Christmas event. Well, I'll go further than that. They pretty much shut it down. And I was trying to be positive way of saying that. And I told him, I said, look, that's fine. I mean, you guys can shut us down. That's great. We're going to comply because we want to be good neighbors and good partners. But I'm going to have to tell the people that you guys are shutting it down because I'm not shutting it down. So I'm just going to have to go to Instagram and say, look, the city has closed it down. It's not us, but that's one of the things they want to do for safety or whatever. And little did I realize that 315,000 views later, the neighborhood began to stand up for us. They began to tell the city, they're saying, you can't cancel Christmas. You can't cancel a drive-through, or people are going to get presents and toys and joy and the laughter and just the biggest event. And so it was quite amazing. And word got out, it got all the way back. And from what I know for a fact, it got to the governor, and he heard that Christmas would be shut down. And he actually sent someone a message saying that we need to keep this thing going. So it's one of those things where when you fight for people every day and you love people in the community, what happens is one day they'll fight for you, and you don't have to try to even ask them to, contact the city or whatever. You just tell them the truth about what's going on, and they rise up and say, look, this is extremely essential. I think a lot of churches right now are, when the pandemic broke out, they didn't really declare themselves as being essential. We, right off the beginning, we didn't negotiate or try to find a graph about who's essential. We're like, we've given $1.5 billion of economic empowerment in 26 years. We have housed people for $81,000 a year. It costs to incarcerate somebody. It costs us $6,000 a year to house them and rehabilitate them in our recovery program. So I didn't debate whether we were essential or not. I told churches, look, you guys are essential. Know that you're essential and do it. So and we just started helping people. We just jumped in and made ourselves a niche and started, and the other churches started doing the same thing across the country. And so this is our time. We got to know that we are extremely important in the cause of doing great things for God. And we just need to step up and know it and believe it and do it and be the best that we can in the process.
Oh, man, I love it. So many people are commenting. Christy says Matthew Barnett is a hero. I 100% agree with her, and I love it. Listen, now, last year you released a book called One Small Step. And
Yes.
The life-changing adventure of following God's nudges. And I know that this comes from a deep conviction of yours. Miracles happen in the motion. And can you tell us about that and maybe, the miracles you've seen and are seeing as you keep taking those steps? I mean, you just shared a bunch of them, but tell us about this idea of one small step.
Yeah, the book is really about getting people started and really understanding what happens and what becomes possible when you don't talk yourself out of doing good, when you don't talk yourself out of compassion. Sometimes, you go somewhere and someone gets a great idea and then all of a sudden it gets nitpicked to death to the point to where nothing ever gets started. And so really the goal is fall in love with the imperfect, fall in love with the ingredients of whatever you have and just doing it and see where it goes. And that's been the Dream Center's mission our entire life. Nobody is really an expert when it comes to doing things. You become an expert as you go and as you learn and as you grow. You get the best plan together, you organize the best you can, but then you do it. And so what I try to really do is let people know that you don't have to negotiate with those things that are good to do, what God wants you to do. He wants you to help people, serve people, love people. And even if it's something that's different than what's in your comfort zone, you got to go for it. And so the goal was just kind of ignite people in that book to really understand the power of motion, what happens when you set your feet forward and you just begin to go. There's also a lot of it in the book about, your heart and the condition of your heart. It opens up with me just talking about a time where I didn't get it right, where I walked right past someone who was in need. It's a very vulnerable book about the fight that we have to die to ourselves and live for others, especially in a world that is so absorbed. And a lot of it's a 26-year wrestling match within my own soul of trying to stay important as far as the motivation to being important of what the vision is really all about. And so that's kind of what's really, that's the purpose of it, is to be honest and vulnerable about the struggle that we all face, to think about others in a time where it's so easy to think about ourselves.
Well, and isn't it true, Pastor Matthew, that we don't hear a lot anymore about dying to yourself?
Yeah.
That's not a real popular message to make it to the top, but it is the way that Jesus modeled, isn't it?
If you take 3 hours of your day and you go out and you serve someone who's in need versus sitting at home and watching the television for 3 hours, your heart condition is going to feel much better. I mean, physically, you're going to feel better. You're not going to be sitting around and watching all this pandemic craze, and you can actually fear yourself into what you fear. I mean, you really can. And when the pandemic first broke out, we were out serving 11 hours a day, handing out food. And I'd go home and watch the news. I feel great coming home. I feel like refreshed, and I'd watch TV for 3 hours, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, Lord, I think I'm going to die, and I was so panicked. But then God spoke to me and he said, you cannot fear what you choose to love. Perfect love casts out all fear. Love the people, and fear will not be able to exist. Fear cannot own you, and a great cause rules your heart. So I just let the cause come alive, and we've taken every precaution that you can under the sun to be able to be smart. But then we went for it, because we realized and they will say things like regarding the church, like they were with me in a time of need. Like, I'll never forget that day when we needed food. Who was there? The church was there. And so this is a time for the church to be memorable. When people look back over their lives, they realize that the church was the one thing that was there for them when they needed it. So I don't think this is a time for us to hide. I think this is our time for us to be on the front lines and to do the greatest work that God's ever called us to do during this time.
It's incredible. And as you mentioned, the pandemic and the fear and the struggle, and 2020 was all that. And 2021
Sure. It's real.
Continues to be challenging. One of our previous guests, Sissy Graham Lynch, actually challenged us out of Daniel 11 that says, those who know their God will stand in strength and take action. Can you give us, as we get ready to wrap up, Pastor Matthew, maybe a challenge to those watching who may be tired or discouraged or even disillusioned with everything that's happening, but they want to stand strong and take action?
Yeah, I just live every day of your life as a servant. Live every day as a need hunter with your head on a swivel, looking for an opportunity to be a blessing. One thing I've really learned about this is how much health comes really in tandem with serving others and doing good. I've always, heard Mary Hart doeth good like a medicine, all these type of things. But boy, when you really put to the test and you're really going for it, like in the middle of this time and era that we're living in, then you really know how really you can outserve your pain, you can outserve your heartache, and you can outserve your struggle, and you serve out of your burden. And that's what I've really learned during this time, is to serve out of your burden and to make a difference.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, hey, if you've been watching our conversation these last few minutes, and I know you've been inspired as I have, this, like I said at the beginning, this is a time for us to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of chaos around, but God has called us to shine light in the darkness. And if you want to connect with us, it's billygraham.ca. Pastor Matthew, how can people continue to connect with you and the Dream Center and the great work that's happening there?
Well, first of all, I just want to make the Dream Center available to you. Dreamcenter.org website. We have all kinds of programs. Everything is free. People can go through a 1-year recovery program for free. All kinds of different ways people's lives can be restored. And so I want to make that, you might know someone who's going through addiction during this time, or picked up a new addiction and struggling. Go to that website. They can fill an online application. Churches we're starting now to bring in youth groups again and teams to come and do mission trips. We started to get that going again. So I'd love to have teams from Canada, as we always do. I think back before the pandemic, we had 7,000 people spend a week at the Dream Center to serve. Wow. And the crazy thing was, like, it felt like maybe a third of them were from Canada. It was incredible, the compassion in your country. People wanted to come down and serve. So that's starting to open up. Things are starting to open up again. And really, and all the programs are available. But if you also want to donate, you can go to dreamcenter.org. You can make any donation to help the work. It's very, very important. I mean, we're getting ready to open up 40 more rooms for homeless families. So when you say that, you're talking like 120 or 130 people that you're taking care of. So it's a really big effort. But we felt like with now the rent issues that are going to get ready to take place in our city, that people are going to be out of homes, they're going to need a place to go. And so we're starting that as well. So those are different ways you can be involved. And I just thank you so much for the time and allowing me to be on here today and talk with your wonderful people.
Yeah, it's incredible. Pastor Matthew, the Lord bless you and the ministry of the Dream Center and your church. And man, just be encouraged that you are making a difference, not only by what you can see there in LA and the cars coming through, but all around the world as we watch and are inspired to take action like you have. So God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you. It's an honor to be with you.
Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time on Always Good News. Take care.
Thank you.